Hey guys, welcome back to another tutorial. If this is your first time, welcome. I hope you find all of the inspiration, tips, and tricks you can find here. Today we're working on this circus themed tumbler. Side note, this does have some sweary words or a sweary word, so if you're offended by that, do not proceed. So we're gonna start off with a prepped and not spray painted base quite yet. So we're going to take this striping assistant tool from the Amy's Make Everything to create just about a half horizontal stripe in the middle of the tumbler. And then on the bottom, probably 1/4 of an inch, we're going to create a stripe for that as well. And then we'll start working on these stripes. Also, side note, I saw this concept done years and years and years ago, and I have absolutely no idea who came up with this red and white striped idea at the bottom. So if you can recall who started that, feel free to tag them. I have the memory of a goldfish, and I have no idea who it was. So I'm sorry, I would tag credit where credit is due, but I cannot recall where it came from. All right, anyway, so moving on, we're gonna go in with this 1-inch tape. I didn't have any 1-inch painter's tape on hand, so I just used this masking tape. And we're going to create a straight line for our kind of anchor, I would say. And then we're gonna alternate between strips. So I've got just a spacer that I'm using to make sure that my spaces are consistent and also keeping them straight so we don't have any slanted or crooked stripes. And I'm just going to continuously use that one spacer piece between until I get to the very end. Spoiler alert, it did not match up exactly at 1 inch when I got back to the original anchor strip that I had laid down. So I just spaced it out. It wasn't too far off, but I just spaced it out enough so it was just over 1 inch. And then by the time you add your gold pinstriping at the end, you can't even tell that there is any sort of overage. Once we've got all of the striping laid down, we're gonna make sure that tape is nice and tight. So once we spray our spray paint, there's not going to be any drips getting underneath that paint. And then we're going to go in with white first. Normally I go darkest to lightest, but I have some problems with my white spray paint lifting occasionally when I put the painter's tape over it. So I wanted to avoid that, so we're going to go in with white first and just be extra cautious with all of the sealing and things like that. And then we'll go in with our glitter mix here. This is a 50-50 mix of Flurries and Opal Majesty from Peachy Olive Glitters. As always, I have discount codes for you guys in the description box for that. Once we've got that glitter all mixed up, I'm gonna go in with a coat of Flint Sisters Fast Setting Epoxy. I do have a discount code for that as well for you guys in the description. And that takes about 2 hours for me to be dry to the touch. That's gonna vary depending on your temperature, humidity, all of the different factors. So what's dry time for me may not be dry time for you. So we're gonna go in and apply that and immediately pull this painter's tape. So once the epoxy cures, it doesn't cure to that tape. You always want to pull that right away. And then once the glitter is cured into the epoxy, we're going to go in with Krylon Triple Thick Spray. You can also use Rust-Oleum 2x Clear Gloss or matte if you've got that on hand. We're going to spray that about, I would say probably 2 times. And then because this is such a tedious tumbler, I'm going to be extra cautious, and I'm also going to put a coat of polyacrylic over the white just to make sure everything is locked in. We don't have any glitter cross-contamination. Once that polyacrylic is dry, we're going to go in with this next step here and tape over the white glitter that is now cured and sealed. Once that is all applied and covered up and tight around the edges, we can then go into our next step, which is going to be the red stripe. I know this seems like a lot of extra work, but the key to this being a very clean and crisp striped tumbler, which I love, is the prep work. So I'm just taking a lot of time making sure everything is crisp, all of the lines are sealed off, everything is kept in place with sealer, all of the things. So I'm just taking all of the precautions to make sure that the end result is successful. It's going to look sloppy if it's not sealed and you've got cross-contamination, especially with the contrast of the white and the red next to each other. It's going to be very, very obvious if the glitters are not sealed in. So I cannot stress that enough, not just because I'm a perfectionist, but because basically the entire end result relies on the sealing of all those glitters. Anyways, there's my rant for the day. So next we're going to go in with the same process we did with the white. We are going to spray paint it with red, tape everything off, make sure that's all in place, and then we'll go in with Sookie from Peachy Olive Glitters, immediately pull that tape, and then here you will enjoy this very satisfying tape peel. This is like ASMR to me. I love watching tape peels like this. All right, so we're gonna pull that all up right away. Same process as the white, like I had mentioned. We'll let that cure and spray seal, and then go in with polyacrylic to make sure that's all in place, and then we can go in with the blue and gold. At this point, I've got both the red and white stripes basically triple sealed, quadruple, sealed. And then I'm gonna go in with, this is just 6-inch transfer tape, and it works really well just to cover everything. I don't have to bother with saran wrap or anything like that. So we're gonna lay that over the glitter to make sure that spray paint's not getting in there, and then we're gonna use the painter's tape to seal off the top of the transfer tape to make sure none of the spray paint seeps down underneath that paint. And then we're gonna go in with just a light blue. It doesn't really matter what blue you're using as long as it's similar to the glitter color that you're using. So we'll spray that, and once that's dry, again, use the epoxy method to apply Bejeweled from Peachy on the top portion of this. Now, side note, I started with the stripes so I could do the top blue glitter and the bottom gold glitter at the same time, so I didn't have to wait for that to cure and then seal, or to tape off the blue and white and red again. So we're gonna pull that tape up immediately, and then we can go in, because the red and the white stripes are dry, we can just go over that with some painter's tape, seal that off, and then go right in with Cleopatra from Peachy as well. We don't need to spray paint this since it's already on a metallic base. You can't even tell that it's silver as opposed to gold. Once that is taped off, I'm just going to use that leftover epoxy from the blue glitter application and put that on the bottom. Go over that with gold and immediately pull that tape. And then we'll let everything sit and cure, and we'll go in again with some spray sealer a couple of times to make sure everything is locked in place. Go over it with polyacrylic once the spray sealer is fully dry and we've knocked off all of the floating glitters or any cross-contamination. Do that before you spray seal, sorry. And then we can go in with epoxy. At this point, I have 2 coats of Flynn Sisters Fast Setting Epoxy over all of this glitter, and for the most part, every single bit of this tumbler is smooth to the touch. I'm just making sure that I'm going around where the gold metallic striping is going to lay to make sure there are no bumps. Because it's metallic, it is very obvious if you lay the vinyl over even the tiniest little bump on this epoxy surface. So make sure everything is completely smooth. We are going to go in with the Dremel at the top to knock down any pokiness that is around that rim, and then use 91% rubbing alcohol to get all of that epoxy dust off of there. And then we can go in with the gold metallic stripes. Now this stripe that I'm laying down here, this is 0.10 by 11.5. And all of the other stripes that I'm using are going to be 0.06 by 11.5. I just wanted a little bit of a thicker band, if you will, separating the blue and the red and white, and then just more subtle striping so it doesn't take away from the glitter striping effect for the other portions. So that was my thought process behind that. And while we're doing this, we are going to want to make sure that the starting point or the seam of the gold striping is going to start at the same point. So wherever your seam is for that thicker band of vinyl, you're going to want to start the other bottom horizontal stripe in that same place so your seams meet up at the same point. Once we get to the vertical striping, we're going to find that white stripe of glitter that was just a little bit bigger than the rest of them, and rather than putting the gold striping in the middle of the seams of the red and the white glitter, we're going to offset it a little bit inward towards, like, over top of the white stripe to give it the effect that that white stripe is the exact same size as the red stripes and the rest of the white stripes. So it's not super noticeable to begin with, but that's just kind of how I trick the eye to make things look like they are the exact same size when I'm working with a tumbler that doesn't give the exact, like, 1-inch measurements, if that makes sense to you guys. Hopefully I'm explaining it some sort of way that you're understanding. Anyways, so we're gonna go in with all of the vertical striping, and we are going to put that back on the turner. Once that's all done, we're gonna go in with some polyacrylic to make sure none of that gold lifts up, and then we'll go in with the decal. The tumbler that we're using is a 30-ounce skinny, so I cut this out at 3.5 inches wide, and I want to say it was like probably 2.5 inches tall. We're going to cut the exact same decal out in both metallic red from Tech Wrap Craft and then just any old white that you've got on hand. The only thing that's different is we are going to weed out the opposite letters, I guess I would say, design that we're weeding out on the red. So the red, I'm weeding out the 2nd, 4th, 6th stripe in the tent. The white, I'm going to weed out the 1st, 3rd, 5th, 7th stripe, if that makes sense to you guys. So, and then we're gonna weed out obviously the letters opposite. So I'm going to apply my red down first, and to make sure that everything is completely straight, I'm going to use just a little piece of painter's tape and run that right along that metallic gold stripe that we've got laid down. We know for sure that that is a straight line because we used that tool in the beginning. So that's going to set us up for success as long as you are following along with that kind of guide of the painter's tape. We're going to use the hinge method to apply this first portion of the decal, and then we'll go in with the white after that and finish this up. I've showed you guys this tip or trick or whatever many times, but anytime I'm using a metallic vinyl, in order to avoid lifting underneath that metallic vinyl, I always pull my painter's tape as flat to the tumbler as possible. If you're lifting it straight up, you're going to encourage that vinyl to lift up and bubble up with that tape. So pulling it flat to the vinyl like I'm doing here, you'll see just kind of glides it right off the vinyl, so it doesn't encourage any lifting or anything like that. So that is a very kind of big tip that I love to give to you guys to get that flawless metallic look. And then once that is all done, we are going to go in again with some polyacrylic. And it was at this moment that I realized that I forgot to put the flag on the top of the tent, so that wasn't a huge deal. I just put it on after that polyacrylic was completely dry. Thankfully, it wasn't a super thin piece of vinyl, so there was no lifting or anything on it. So not a big deal. I just put it on after that was dry before my final coat of epoxy, and we moved on with our life. So yay! So one final coat of Flint Sisters regular setting epoxy is all I needed to finish this. We are all done. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're not already. Hit the bell button for notifications for next week, and I will see you guys later.